So I think it's now a necessity rather than a choice for our members to quickly become adept and comfortable with both the technology and the means through which one can mediate and arbitrate successfully online. And those are two different things. And we need to get up to speed very quickly. So who better than to help us through that learning process than Susan? Susan's one of the most experienced dispute resolution professionals in the family mediation field. I've heard of her work in California. She's now based in Chicago. Although with this magic medium, she could be anywhere, of course. She's really one of the pioneers in the ODR field. So she settled hundreds of cases through this medium. So Susan, thank you for stepping up to the plate and joining us today. I think we're getting near 400 connections. Anybody that does miss this because they can't log on, of course, will get a recording, a YouTube link off tomorrow. So all the members can catch up then, even those that can't join us today. So thank you for joining us, Susan. Again, the format will go 45 minutes or so with your presentation. And then we'll get at least 10-15 minutes of questions in at the end. I'll be looking at the chat window and we'll sort of throw those to you. I'll try not to interrupt the flow of your presentation because I know there's a lot to get through. So this is the point where normally there'll be a ripple of polite applause as I introduce you. Rest assured that's happening around North America, including some of our friends in Canada who are joining us. So I'll hand the floor over to you, Susan. Please take it away.
Thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to you all for having me here and for being proactive and seeking out information on how to conduct your mediations online. I want to thank, the Academy and Darren. Darren reached out to me earlier in the week to get information for all of you. So I really commend him and I commend your organization because he has been working hard to bring you all information on online dispute resolution. And that's how this webinar came about. So today we are going to be covering, some of the basics of online mediation. This is a 45-minute presentation. My training programs are hours long. So obviously I cannot get into the minutiae of the trainings, but what I want to do is make you all aware at a high level of what you need to be aware of in order to conduct a smooth process for both yourself and your clients, because that's what we want in the end. My biggest fear is that people just jump on, and I always call it wing it, which is what I did 5 years ago when I started doing this. And so really what you learn from me is what not to do based on my mistakes. So I did want to just give you a little of my background. Darren was very nice and to tell you a little bit, but I think it helps you to understand how I came to online mediation and what I'm doing. I have a fully online practice. I do not have a brick and mortar office. I'm in my home right now. I have not opened an office for the past couple of years. And when I opened one in California, I never went to it because once I segued over to an online practice, I became so busy because of the demand for my online mediation, but also because it opened my practice up to other modalities. I do coaching around the world. I do mediations around the world. I work with clients in all different capacities and consulting around the world. I no longer needed to have a brick and mortar office. But before I started going online 5 years ago, I was probably like most of you. I had a practice for 26 years in Fairfield County, Connecticut. I did family law, litigation and mediation, and did everything in my conference room, just like you all are probably doing. So just know this hasn't been, this is something that I've learned to do in the last 5 years, and I'm at the point where I don't have an office anymore. I am also, I just want to mention, the ABA section of Dispute Resolution's membership officer, and I'm the mediation committee co-chair. For any of you who are members of NADN who would like to also be members of the ABA section of Dispute Resolution, please feel free to reach out to me. And then I have my own separate business now because so many of my colleagues have wanted to know about learning to mediate online that I simply named it Learn to Mediate Online. So that's what this high-level program is based on, my actual training. So I know, I told you how I came to online mediation. It's really because I started moving around the country and needed to be able to be available to people. I know many of you are here because of the situation that we find ourselves in today. I am hearing from literally thousands of mediators and professionals from around the world almost daily. I mean, the deluge of emails and telephone calls that I'm receiving has been quite overwhelming. But that is because people are truly finding themselves in a situation where their practices have ground to almost a halt. So my goal today is to make sure that you are able to get online and conduct mediations or arbitrations or meetings in the best way possible. And I just always point out that, really there's been the reaction that I have received as I have been going around the country talking about ODR and dispute resolution online has been overwhelmingly positive from the clients. It's the professionals that I have found the biggest knee-jerk reaction to, oh no, we have to do it in person. It's going to be different. There are differences, but in many ways, the online experience can be better than in person. And in many instances, it suits the situation better. So I applaud you all for thinking outside the box. Because we do, especially in today's times, need to find new ways to do things. So I do want to be clear about what I'm talking about when I reference ODR, online mediation, because there are many different modalities out there today. My colleagues at ABA, Amy Schmitz and Colin Rule, use artificial intelligence, and they have platforms for court that, and a great deal. Amy teaches in school, in law school, courses on mediating through text messaging. What I'm talking about is conducting your mediations through the use of an online video conferencing program. Now, I have a few of them listed here on the screen. I happen to use Zoom. I do want to be clear that I'm not affiliated with Zoom. I don't work for Zoom, and I'm not a Zoom expert. I am a person who uses Zoom to do my mediations because I have found that it has the functionality that I need to conduct mediations in my style. Darren mentioned I'm a family law mediator, so my mediations may be different from yours. I train mediators from all different fields all the time, and many of them do use Zoom. I encourage you to find the platform that works best for you. And I know some of you are probably with organizations that already have contracts or already have some type of video conferencing program. If you are using those, just be thinking about what I'm talking about here so that you can find the functionality in your program to do the things that we're going to talk about. Because really what we're looking at here is how do you do what you would do in an in-person mediation through the online platform. And that includes all the things. I've received many, many emails from you all about caucusing. I realize that many of you work in a fully caucus style mediation. So we'll talk about some of the modalities that you need, but it doesn't have to be Zoom. I know people that use Skype for business. I know people that use GoToMeeting. I have not used High Five, but I know people that like it. There are also some new platforms. I spoke with the people at Modron the other day. That's a platform out of Australia. It looks very promising, I will tell you. It's an online platform for mediation specifically created for us. It also has practice management software. It is missing some of the functionality that I use in my mediations. So I've informed them that for me, it's not the right platform right now, but they're adding those. So they'll be in touch, and I'll be keeping this information up to date. One thing I will say, if you go to my website, Learn to Mediate Online, and sign up for the newsletter, I send out newsletters with up-to-date information and tips. And people send me questions all the time. If I think there's something that would be helpful, I send that out. So you may want to do that. The other thing is, obviously at this time in our world, the reason that the video conferencing is successful is the participants are all going to be remote from you, and they may be remote from each other. In fact, most of the time today they are. So we're going to be going over some of the modalities that I think you need. I do want to make you all aware of some of the other benefits of mediating online. These are the reasons that I got into it and why I've stayed with it and taken my practice fully online. Some of them will be more apparent to you. Others may be things that I've learned over time as I've been doing this. But obviously it's more convenient in many ways. No one needs to travel. And within some limitations, everyone participating can be in a different location. And we'll talk about what those limitations are, but this gives you the ability, especially for those complicated mediations or, other meetings where you have people from all around the country, no longer do they need to travel. For those of us who are conducting mediations, like when I was in Connecticut and most of my clients were working in Manhattan, they would have to take at least a half day off work to come back out on the train to attend the mediation sessions. People can beam in from pretty much anywhere that they happen to be, as long as we have certain limitations in place. It expands your client base. So this was one thing that for me became immediately apparent when I started offering online mediations in Connecticut, which was my original state of practice. I was living in California at the time. I took out I think it was like a $30 Google ad across the state of Connecticut, advertising that I was doing online mediations. That first day, I booked 3 mediations that all became clients. So, whereas when I was located in one county and most of my clients came from there, I immediately expanded to the entire state. And that is something that you can all think about, because the other thing is that I've been able to, expand my offerings to people. I've been able to expand what I can do to help people. And I work in a coaching basis with people. I do consulting with, as a litigation expert for people who are going through high conflict family law divorce cases. There are a lot of different things that you might be able to expand your income, expand your practice. My overhead, this one always gets people's attention. My overhead is under $100 per month, and that is the cost of my programs that I use. I have no rent, I have no utilities, I have very limited staff. I have a virtual assistant, VA, that I pay $15 an hour to, and that's it. So the other things that are good for the clients, it's more comfortable and supportive for them. They are no longer going to a stranger's office, sitting in traffic to get there. They can, for people going through some trauma or difficulties emotionally with what's going on, they can be in a place of comfort. Most of my clients are at home or in their office. So that's something to keep in mind. It's also safer. It's safer for all of us today because of the COVID-19 situation. But where you have cases that are high conflict or domestic violence cases, I realize many of you are not family practitioners, but something to be aware of is that cases where you might have kept the parties apart because of caucus in the past, because it was a safety issue, you now can actually have joint session because they're safe, because they're in separate locations. That's a practice matter for you all. But I've been able to do joint session in high conflict matters that I would never have been able to do if I had been in the location with them. And certainly they could not be in the same location. And then disability compatible, just something to think of. I have deaf clients who are able to use because they have their computer screens, they are able to use the subtitling. I have clients who are quadriplegics who do not need to leave their home so that they can access the benefits of mediation. So there's a lot there that goes beyond just the current situation. And I hope as you all explore online mediation, you're going to experience some of these benefits as well. But there is a caution that you all are probably aware of as you think about this. It's the number one thing I hear, because there's one major difference. There's one significant difference between in-person mediation and online mediation, and that's your client's environment is totally out of your control, right? They are somewhere remote from you, and you have no ability to know who's there, what they're doing, who's around, what their conditions are. And at a very high level, this can lead to issues with privacy and confidentiality, which are a major concern for all of us. And as professionals, something that we have to be concerned with. So one of the things that I'll be talking about today is, what we need to be aware of and how we can take control as much as we can of the fact that their environment is out of our control. And I'll tell you, that is through educating the clients and informing them and setting expectations for them. And I have suggested ways for doing that. So today, what I'm going to do in this presentation is, again, at a high level, talk about just the modality of conducting a mediation on online video conferencing. I'm doing it on Zoom. You can do it on whatever platform works best for you. And then I'm going to highlight some of the practical and ethical considerations with my suggestions, again, to be adapted to your particular practices, because every one of us does things differently, deals with things differently, but I'm going to try and make you aware of what you need to think about. And I want to emphasize that is, do not just go into an online mediation thinking you will turn on the video conferencing program and it's all going to go smoothly. You have to put time, effort, and some practice into doing this before you try to mediate online if you want it to go well. And we all want it to go well because we want it to be a good experience for us. We want it to be a good experience for the clients, and then it's a good experience for our profession. So I'm going to start with some real basics regarding setup and equipment, because I get a ton of questions about this. People are emailing me all the time about these. So I'm going to just review them quickly. What you need at a very basic level is a good laptop or desktop computer. What I suggest is that it have a large screen and that it be a fairly current model. I will tell you that, I have a brand new laptop that I'm using, but I also have a secondary laptop. Oops, sorry, it's over here. I keep it available just in case something happens to this one. I've learned the hard way that our hardware does not always work well for us. I also have my big iPad here just in case. I also always have my phone with me. You can't have too many backup resources. Now, it's extremely important for the flow of the process that you have a strong internet connection, and your participants need to have a strong internet connection. I actually have had my laptop here at home hardwired so that I don't have Wi-Fi connection issues, but you are going to get a frozen screen at times, and you're going to get wonky audio if you have a poor connection or your participants have a poor connection. So it is important that they know that so that they can be sure to make sure they're in a location that has if they're going off Wi-Fi, it's got to be a strong connection. Yours does too. And I can't emphasize that enough, because as the screen's freezing, as the sound is doing those strange wah wah things, that definitely denigrates the experience and clients will get very frustrated quickly. The other thing that's essential is that it is a secure internet connection. Clients have gone, for me, they have gone to Starbucks to do their divorce mediation. They have logged on at the library. They have logged on at, their friend's house on the guest Wi-Fi. They have to have a secure Wi-Fi connection or internet connection, as do you. I've had mediators say, one said to me the other day, well, I don't have internet. I'm going to go to the Dunkin' Donuts down the street. You can't go to the Dunkin' Donuts down the street and do your mediations, nor can your clients. A microphone. So most of you, if you have a relatively new laptop or computer, it's going to have an integrated microphone that's probably good enough for mediations. I have a USB plug-in. I do podcasts and videos recording, so I need a high level of audio quality. This was not expensive. It was $79 from Amazon. I have more expensive ones for the podcast taping. If you feel that your sound's not good, take the time to invest in the microphone. You also likely have a camera that's integrated into your laptop that is likely also probably good enough if it's a relatively new camera. But if you feel that it's not good, you can also get a USB plug-in HD quality camera. Although I have heard from some of my trainees that these have become very difficult to obtain right now. With so many schools going online, businesses going online, and people without older hardware, they are going out and buying these. And so my understanding is it's hard to get this right now. So if you don't have one, see if you can find one. And then the last thing that I want to make you all just aware of is I do also keep headphones available. I do over the ears because they have the best sound. I know it makes me look like Princess Leia at times, but for me, the quality of hearing what people are saying is more important. So if you either have noise in your background or your clients have noise in their background, it can be incredibly helpful to have headphones. You can use the earbud ones. I don't recommend the Wi-Fi's because sometimes the Wi-Fi will go out and that can cause problems in the middle of the mediation. And if you're using the microphone that's on the cord with the earbuds, people have complained about the sound on that. As it moves around, it will go in and out and it brushes on your clothing. Background. So keep in mind, many of you, especially right now, are working from home because of the viral situation. You need to have a professional and neutral background as you're conducting your mediations. I'm in my home office. I have bookshelves. Some people prefer to have just a blank wall because it's neutral. It's not intrusive into the process. But if you're doing this out of your spare bedroom, I have logged on with people who had laundry that was being folded on the bed in the background. They've had their kids playing in the background. We'll talk about why that's not appropriate. You want to have something, this is a professional experience. I probably don't need to mention that to you all, but people ask me, so I want to mention that. Take some time to have your background set up, clean, neat, and look professional. Zoom has an option to have a virtual background that is a high level. I'm not going to go into how to create that here, but it is an option. If you have a white wall behind you, it's easy to project your logo or a picture. I did a mediation the other day with a gentleman who had a picture of the canals of Venice behind him. It was lovely to look at. If you have something like I do behind you, you can't use the virtual unless you put up a green screen. I bought mine for $20 on Amazon. It's literally a green sheet that I clip up there, and then I can project a logo on there. And just last, I apologize, last is lighting and appearance. I get these questions a lot as well. So lighting, you do not want lighting behind you. Especially not if it's the only light source. So many people will position their laptop with a window behind them at their desk. That is not good for a mediation. You end up in shadow. You look like Deep Throat during Watergate hearings. People cannot see your face. It's the worst possible presentation for them. Importantly, they can't do that either. It's important for you. 85% of our communication is visual. So the clients, the participants, they all need to be visible as well. So if they log on and they're in shadow, you need to inform them about the lighting, have them move their laptop or their computer to a better location. Ideally, lighting would not be above you. It would be over to the sides of you, in front of you, but over to the side so it's not shining in your eyes. I have a professional lighting setup, again, because of the videos and podcast. You don't need that, but again, I got my lights for about $20 on Amazon, and they're just set up on either side of me. The other thing with camera positioning, I'm using right now the camera on my laptop. It's just straight ahead of me. You do not want a camera usually down below you. It's an awkward angle. People are looking up your nose. That's not very professional. It's also not very flattering. There's the general rule in video is that you want it either straight ahead of you or slightly above you coming down. And then just always, for all of us, be aware that very differently from your in-person mediations, you are visible, as I am right now on the screen for most of you. You are visible at all times during the mediation unless people are in those breakout rooms. So be aware that your facial expression, if you're doing the eye rolling or any of those things that you might have done in an in-person mediation, not possible in an online mediation. And also just realize it takes a little while to get used to seeing your face on screen 24/7 during your mediations. People have told me they feel like they're constantly playing with their hair or fixing things. You get past that, I would say, fairly quickly. I forget now that I'm on screen. It's second nature to me. So let's talk about setting your meetings up and using the waiting room function. And again, the waiting room function is something that we have on Zoom. It's a virtual waiting room. These slides, normally I wouldn't have so much detail in my slides, but I will make these slides available to you all through NADN. I'll send them to Darren so that he can post them and access to them for you. So I put a little more detail in here so that you all, have them to use and don't need to take notes. But one of the things that we usually, I think, do in our mediations that are in person is we do not just start chit-chatting and sitting down with people as they show up, in an attempt to preserve the appearance of our neutrality. We will usually have some sort of waiting room situation. Well, Zoom allows for that as well online. There is a waiting room function. It needs to be enabled. And when you're setting up your meeting, that is one of the options, enable waiting room. But the other thing that you need to do is remember that just because you have the waiting room set up, it is a different type of waiting room than the waiting room in your regular office. People pop into the meeting and they're just going to see a screen saying, please wait for your host to open the meeting. Now that can be personalized if you go into the Zoom settings and it can say, Susan will be with you shortly. Thank you for joining the mediation, or whatever you would like to say. But it's still a blank screen. So I always let people know ahead of time, and I do it in multiple ways. I do it in their setup email. I do it in my retainer letter. I have an attachment that goes on that tells them some of these, high level things that they need to be aware of. And I just let them know they're going to go into that waiting room and they'll be there until they've all signed on, at which point I'll let them into the meeting. Now, if your meetings run differently than that, you don't need to do it the way I do it, but you need to have some thought about how you're going to aggregate people and then let them into the meeting. Are you going to let them into the main conference room, or are you going to put them into the breakout rooms that we'll talk about later? Do understand that the virtual waiting room is different than your personal waiting room or your in-person waiting room, where people can see each other and talk to each other. Zoom's virtual waiting room, I call the cone of silence. They don't know who else is in the waiting room. They don't have an ability to talk to each other. So it's not appropriate for people to be put in the waiting room to have discussions. You'll need to use breakout rooms for that. But it is, an appropriate place when people are signing on or if you're taking a break. So I find taking a few minutes to explain that to people and have some sensitivity to the fact that they don't see anyone else, and let them know why you're doing that. I also, because it's an online virtual waiting room that's a cone of silence, I try not to let them sit in there for too long without having some contact from me. So if it becomes necessary, for example, in my practice, if I'm waiting for both a husband and a wife to log on, and they rarely do that at the same time, I will communicate via text or email with the one who has signed on to find out if they know where the other one is, or I will email the one who has not shown up on time. So that is something, to be aware of. Now, caucus and breakout rooms. I'm going to cover these at that high level. These are two things, and certainly breakout rooms for most of you are going to be by far the most important functionality that you need to get on top of and understand how to do. I could show you 10 times how to do these things. You have to practice on Zoom in all of the modalities, but certainly in breakout rooms. It's not that it's difficult. It is not, but it does take practice. And what many of my trainees have been doing is creating groups and signing on to practice sessions where they role play, making it, putting people into breakout rooms. But if you are in a joint session and you just want to quickly caucus with one of the parties, then it's very simple to just put one of the parties back into the virtual waiting room or back into the cone of silence. And for me, with a mediation, family mediation practice where I'm usually just working with a husband and wife, that's how I do it most often. So for anyone who you're in joint session most of the time, but you need to take a break, meet with each of them individually. You just go hover over participants on your toolbar. The option there for each one of them is to put in waiting room. You can put them back in the waiting room, talk to one, and then switch that up. But for breakout rooms, it's a little bit more involved, not a great deal more involved, but it does take a little more thought. Now you have two options for setting up your breakout rooms on Zoom, at least. You can do it at the time you are creating the meeting. So if you are a mediator who always works in caucus, then you would likely want to create your breakout rooms at that time just to make your life easy. You can also then assign people to those breakout rooms. If you are in joint session or find that you want to go to breakout rooms, it's very simple. Down on your toolbar is a breakout room option that lets you start creating them during the meeting. And if you've created some at the beginning of the meeting and want more of them in the middle of the meeting, that's the same thing. You click on the breakout rooms. You can add meetings. You can move people between meetings. You can move as the host between meetings. You can broadcast messages to the rooms, and people in the rooms, it's not the cone of silence waiting room. It is a separate meeting. So they have the ability to converse, such as plaintiff's counsel and the plaintiff, or defense counsel and the adjuster. You can have them in the room. They can be discussing things and you can go back and forth. The big difference is you're not running up and down a hallway, but you can communicate with them. You can bring them back into the main conference room if you want to do a joint session, or you can keep them separate. And if you want to create, say, a third breakout room, you can create that and put the two attorneys in there. I mean, it just takes some practice. And that is something that, again, I could show you 10 times. It's not going to, take the place of your doing it. Here, I want to be very clear that Zoom, at least, has excellent training videos on the website, various ways to get to them. But the easiest way is to go to zoom.us. In the upper right-hand corner, it says resources. Click on resources, and the second one down, I believe, is video tutorials. That brings up their most, viewed. And I think the fifth one down is breakout rooms. That one is a 2.5-minute video that will change your world and perception of breakout rooms. I strongly encourage you to watch that more than once, but then they have breakdowns even from there on the further functionality of breakout rooms. This is the key for you all in order to have a smooth process. But I learned how to do this by using their tutorials. They also have extremely good support, although their support is a little overwhelmed at the moment. I did log on yesterday for a little help because I needed increased capacity for this webinar, since so many of you were interested in this webinar. And it did take about 40 minutes for someone to come on the chat bot, but they were excellent as soon as they did. And I've heard from some people that calling in is a little difficult at the moment. One thing I will say is you rarely need that because their tutorials are excellent. So moving on to, these are some of the modalities that I find super helpful that are very simple on Zoom and that I use in almost every single mediation that I use. So there's screen sharing, which is a simple, if you go to your toolbar when you're the host, and if you're a participant, participants can screen share as well. Very helpful. If you've got an attorney who's going to bring up an agreement, they can bring it up on Word. They can make changes on the screen while you are all looking at the same document. It is actually one of the places where I find online is better than in person. I'm not leaning across my conference table trying to point to which paragraph I'm talking about or handwriting changes. I can actually make the changes with everyone watching and agreeing that that was the change we wanted to make. I can pull it up as a Word document. Participants can pull it up. I can pull up other documents. Any program that is open on your computer can be shared on the share screen. So you would just click on the new share. It will bring up a white board on your, a white screen that shows all of the open thumbnails of everything that's open. You click on the one you want to share and you hit share and it comes up. And that's how I'm sharing this PowerPoint. And then you can see I'm able to click through the PowerPoint. So for those of you who might I use financial software when I'm doing a divorce mediation to run child support guidelines. I can pull that up on the screen and the parties can see me doing it. Really helpful. Other things that I find helpful are using the whiteboard function, as well as you can share your iPad screen. So this big iPad Pro that I have, your iPhone can be shared. Those are sharing options as well. Zoom has a whiteboard function. You can click on share screen. The whiteboard function is there. You click on that, you click share, it brings it up. You can type on it, you can write on it. Very importantly, you can save those whiteboards. So if you want to do a whole bunch of them in a row, you can do one, share it, or save it. You don't just have to share it, you can save it. You can save it into your files. You can save it as a function of Zoom and it will save it into the Zoom file. Whatever you need to do there, you can share them. So unlike in the past where you were writing on a piece of paper or on a chalkboard or on your wall, however you were doing your whiteboards, or on a legal pad, you now can do it here on the screen or here on your iPad and then just save those right into the client's file. You can share it with them down the road. Another function that's actually better online that it is on in person. Now that Modron that I talked about earlier, the two functionalities that they don't have yet are screen sharing and whiteboard. I let them know that I think those are critical and they will be adding those, they said they hope in the next month. So again, I'll keep you up to date on that. So I do want to get into some of the practical and ethical considerations that I want you all to be aware of and how I try to deal with those in my personal practice, with a suggestion that you consider that as how you want to approach these things. So first off, you need to have probably more than video conferencing capability, more than just a Zoom account or just a Skype for business account. You do need to have that. And I will point out to you, for those of you using Zoom, you need to have more than the free account. You cannot use a Zoom free account membership to do mediations, mainly because there's a 40-minute time limitation. So unless you are a speed mediator, that is not going to work for you. And you will find out the hard way if you try it, that the screen will go dark after 40 minutes. I do want to point out that your participants can have the free account. Their limitations on time do not affect your meetings as host. I have the lowest level of professional membership at $14.95 with Zoom. That has always worked for me. I have a higher level of webinar capacity now, but I have just the $14.95 a month Zoom account. As long as the host has a professional account, the meeting can be almost as long as you want it to be, and it can have up to 100 people. But you're also going to want to consider having some other programs. So one, and many of you probably already have something, but for sharing and storing documents, these are, very often confidential documents. They can't and shouldn't be usually sent by attachment to an email. How are your clients going to get you documents now that they're no longer sitting in your office handing you things? I happen to use Dropbox. Again, I've used Dropbox, I think, for about 20 years. So I use that, but it has to just be a secure document transmission platform. I personally use DocuSign for the signing and execution of documents. So if you're a person who usually has people sign things in your office, they will not be in your office to do that. So you can still go through the emailing them a document, having them print it out, having them sign it, scan it, and send it back. or use some other event, modality, but just think about it ahead of time. I will say, as a practice measure, for getting my mediation agreement signed, for getting my online guidelines and ground rules signed, for getting things signed by clients, I have almost immediate turnaround because DocuSign is so easy for them. It also is very nice because once it's fully signed, DocuSign sends the clients a fully executed copy. It is an encrypted program, so for me, DocuSign works well. The other thing is, and keep this in mind when you pick your programs, the more familiar the world is with the programs you're picking, the more popular the programs are that you choose, the better, I have found, because that's more likely that your participants are going to be familiar with them. Zoom is one of the most used video conferencing platforms in the world. I rarely find clients that don't have some familiarity with it because they've been using it at work. DocuSign is the same thing. If you've bought a house recently, I think almost everybody out there has signed things by DocuSign recently. So have your clients. So something to keep in mind. And then importantly for us as professionals, nobody's in your office anymore to write you a check. So just think about how you want to get paid. And that can be, I happen to use Square and PayPal, which allow me to invoice people. They can click on a button and pay by credit card immediately. That has increased my rate of getting paid exponentially. And many of my clients like to use Venmo. Venmo is an automatic ACH secure platform that uses Plaid, which is a platform that most banks and financial institutions use, and money goes directly from the client's bank account into your bank account. There's no cost to using Venmo. Square and PayPal are merchant accounts, and you are going to pay between 2 and 3% usually for those credit card transactions, as you would anyway. But I'm not saying you have to use them. I'm saying you need to think about how you're going to get paid. So if you're willing to wait for a check in the mail, that's fine. Just make sure that you make it clear to the clients how you get paid and that you've thought about it. And I always let my clients know what programs that I do use. And if there are any requirements of them to use them, I want them to know ahead of time. Most importantly, if you're going to do your mediations by video conferencing, you need to let them know ahead of time that if you're using Zoom, there's some requirements there. They're going to have to download the program. They may either open a free account, or Zoom has something called a Zoom client portal that allows them to download it without opening an account. But those are, things that you need to let them know about ahead of time. I also let them know that not only do they have to download it, but I expect them to check it out, become familiar with it, because there's much less that the participants need to do in the session than you need to do. We do most of it as the host, but they still need to know how to turn their camera on. They need to know they have a camera. They need to know they have a microphone, how to turn it on and off. You will spend valuable time in their mediation teaching that to them. If they don't take that time, they will get a little irritated if a lot of the time is eaten up in their paid for session going over the technology. But at least if you've told them to do this ahead of time, they can't be as irritated if there's still time to do that, or it takes time to do that.
Susan, if I might interrupt just 1 second.
Of course.
It's logging on to those mediations is no more difficult than the folks logging on today. It's the barrier for entry is very low. 9 times out of 10, they should have no problems logging on. Even the Luddites amongst the parties in attendance can click on the join link just as the members did today.
Absolutely. And I should point out, my 80-year-old mother, my 86-year-old former law partner have all from the very get-go been able to click on a link and figure out how to open up the Zoom link and use it. So this is not something that is hard. And that's another reason why I like Zoom, but other platforms people may be more familiar with. But it is relatively simple to sign on. You need to send them the sign-on information. You can integrate your calendar and send clients calendar invites with all of the sign-on information. Zoom automates most of that for you. Check out the Zoom platform. Most of the platforms allow you to do that. It's very simple. And part of my training is I take you through how to set up the sessions and how to notify the clients. But, this is something, just take the time to think about giving this information to your clients in advance of the mediation session.
Yeah.
So my biggest tip out of all of this is that I have learned that I have created a document that educates and informs my clients ahead of time on all of this. And I call it my online guidelines and ground rules. You can call it whatever you like, but I do suggest creating a written document that so I give it to them before my first consultation with them. I give it to them attached to my mediation agreement, and it's referenced and incorporated into the agreement. I make them sign it. And at a high level, I go over it with them in the first mediation session. And it contains all of these considerations that I am suggesting that you consider. So it's my way of educating the clients. Remember at the beginning, I said the number one way you can take control of the client's environment is through client education and setting expectations. And you do that through this written document, or at least I do it through the written document. And I will say that having this has been what has made having an online practice viable for me and successful for me. If you talk to my clients who have gone through online mediations with me, I do not get a lot of complaints from clients about the process. In fact, most of them are ecstatic about it. They feel that it was, a very comfortable way for them to go through the process. And the guidelines and ground rules, or the document that you create, is going to have a great deal to do with setting those expectations and letting them know what they need to know. So that's my number one tip that you can take out of this, if nothing else. I do want to touch on privacy and confidentiality, because they are of the utmost concern to us as professionals dealing with our clients. So confidentiality, there can be further complications with confidentiality, so you need to take precautions. Some of the high-level precautions are that you need to be doing this on an encrypted software program. You can't be using something, I've heard people doing their mediations on FaceTime. I have no idea if FaceTime is an encrypted or safe platform. Make sure whatever program you're picking and using, all of them are confidential and encrypted programs. You need to, I mediate now and work with clients all around the world. You have to take the time to find out what the evidentiary rules around mediation confidentiality are in any jurisdiction in which you're going to dip your toes, and you need to make the clients aware of them. So that document that I just referenced, that I've created, that I give to all my clients, and my agreement to mediate, change based upon where I am doing my mediations. And if my clients are in different locations, I will include the evidentiary code provisions for each of their locations. I feel that you can't give them enough information, and I explain to them, what confidentiality means. Some of this is stuff you're already doing anyway, but remember, everyone's remote, everyone's nervous on this issue, and so you want to explain to them that you are, that the programs that you're using have to be confident, or have to be encrypted. Theirs have to be as well, and that's why the Wi-Fi connection is so important. A public Wi-Fi connection is not a secure Wi-Fi connection. The other one, and this is where you get into problems, and I've had them, so learn from my mistakes. Privacy becomes an issue. It's one of the biggest benefits of mediation. It's also the one that's most easily attacked or violated in the online platform. And by that, I mean the fact that the parties are remote makes this more vulnerable, because there can be third parties present that we cannot see. There can be eavesdroppers, and I don't mean there can be intentional eavesdroppers, but there can also be people who are unintentionally eavesdropping. And again, we get the secure Wi-Fi and the recording capabilities. So let me go through those. No third parties. So you have to make it clear to people that only the participants of the mediation can be present in the space that they are in. So when your people are in their office, they can't have the door open with people coming in and out. They can't be sitting in a cubicle where there are people wandering behind them. They can't be at Starbucks. They can't be, in a place where there are other people. If they're at home, they can't have their kids playing in the background as I have had. They can't have the nanny coming in and out. Other family members. There cannot be third parties. And I always tell people the horror story I had, where before I had my written guidelines and ground rules, a gentleman's girlfriend wanted to know why the divorce mediation was taking such a long time. So he said, sit in on it and you can hear. And so she sat in on the other side of the screen. You can see, all you can see of me is me from my shoulders up. If there's someone on the other side of the screen, you will not know it. I ask everyone before I start the mediation process if they are, private and if they are able to be overheard. And it's important, but I put this in writing to them that they cannot violate this provision. That client, when I asked him, it of course came out down the road that the girlfriend had sat in on the process. And that mediation went quickly to a very nasty litigation. And when I asked him why he did it, he said, well, no one told me I couldn't. So let's learn from that and tell them that they can't. You also have to tell them they can't be overheard. It's also not just a matter of, people being in the room, but if they're in a place where they can be overheard, they have to take measures to make sure that the process, not that they can't be overheard, but also that the what's being said on the screen can't be overheard. I've talked about secure Wi-Fi. I do want to talk about recording because I know a lot of you have had questions about that. So Zoom has controls over who can record. The default setting is only the host can record. So unless you give your participants the ability to record, they can't. I personally do not ever record my mediations. Clients will ask. I get asked fairly often by them to do it, and I just make it clear it's in my guidelines and ground rules. It's in my discussions with clients. I choose not to be the custodian of a recording, audio or video, of their process. Other mediators have told me they do not have a problem with that and that they feel it's an aid to them, so they don't take notes. I don't do it. That is a choice for you to make, but I feel that it creates an issue for me professionally, and I choose not to have that. You do want to make sure in your settings, if you're using Zoom, that you have not enabled the participants to record by mistake or by default. There's also, when you're setting up your meeting, one of the options is to automatically record. So you don't want to check that box, obviously. So those are things to, in the functionality that you're going to have to practice with and go into the settings to make sure. But recording, when someone is recording, it will be shown on the screen. I am recording this webinar. There's a little green dot and that shows recording up in the corner here. In a meeting, everyone would see that. So if you're not seeing it, it's because it's a webinar, which means that you don't see all of the screens that I'm seeing, but in a mediation or in a meeting, you would see that. Some of the ground rules that I also set are more practical, but you have to, it's more where I'm doing that expectation setting for them. I tell them it's an interruption-free zone. So if they were in your offices, they would not be having people coming in, asking them to take a call, sign this document, answer this doorbell, make lunch for the kids, whatever those things might be. So I tell them to please make it an interruption-free zone. This can also be turning off the messaging on their devices. If they get a ding every time they get an email on their laptop, you're going to be sitting there in a meeting that's got dings going on, ding, 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 ding. It's very distracting. I also ask them to take a technology hiatus other than the technology that they need to be functioning in the mediation session. Because what I find is when people are on their laptop or on their computer or on their phone, they start answering their emails, or they start doing social media, or they start doing God knows what, but it detracts from the experience, obviously. So if they are in session, if you're using breakout rooms and they want to go do something else and you're in the other breakout room, that's one thing. But when you're in session with them, you will see their eyes moving and you're going to realize they're doing something else. Set the expectation that this is their time they're paying for. Everyone needs to be respectful and take a hiatus. I always suggest an early log on. And this is something I say not only in the guidelines and ground rules, but I say it in the emails they get setting up each session. Sign on 5 minutes early. For the first one, maybe sign on 10 minutes early. Almost any sign-on issue can be resolved in 5 minutes. Have your phone available or have your assistant available by email if they're having trouble. But what I find is if you don't have them signing on a couple minutes early and then you spend 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning of their session trying to figure it out, they start to be upset about the online platform because now it's eating into their time. So that early log on has been very helpful. I also just mentioned to them that they need to, you probably all mention respectful communication, allowing each other to finish what they're saying, etc. But for a respectful and effective online communication, you need to take it to a little bit higher level. It's imperative that they let each other finish their sentences, because at least through Zoom, the technology will often not catch any of the audio from one of the two people talking. So sometimes they'll think you heard them, because in person, when two people are talking, you can sometimes catch both of them, or parts of it at least. In the online platform, often you don't catch what one person is saying at all. This is helpful when you tell them this, because they are actually a little more conscious of not talking over each other. But also effective online communication. Body language is a large part of how we communicate. I know that people are concerned that the personal touch is lost online. I have not found that to be true. Most of our communication is through our voice and voice inflection, which is very visible or audible in this format, and is our facial expressions. But do remember that you're only visible and they are only visible from the shoulders up. And if you're a hand talker like I am, you can't hand talk down here and be effective. All you see is my hair moving. You have to start to learn, just as a practice, if you're going to count things out, if you're going to talk about things, you just need to start putting your hands up here, or not do it. The lifesaver. This is the one thing that you should think about ahead of time and make sure is in that written document that I've suggested. And that is, have a simple protocol in place in case of tech failure, because sooner or later there will be tech failure. It is technology. It is not perfect. Somebody's computer is going to decide to update itself in the middle. That's happened to me. Somebody's battery is going to die in the middle. That has happened to me. Somebody's camera is going to die. Someone's Wi-Fi is going to go out. Something is going to happen. It has all happened to me. You have to let them know ahead of time how to handle that. And what you do with that is decrease the anxiety, decrease the problem with the issue. I keep it simple, my KISS method, right? Keep it simple, stupid. I tell them to try to log back in, depending on what the issue was. And if they cannot, I give them a number. It's my cell phone number, and I tell them to call me. You can have them email you, but remember, they may not have that capability if their computer's gone out, but usually they'll have a phone available. But just have a simple protocol in place so they know. It has happened in many of my mediations where something's gone wrong. They call in, and you can either continue with them telephonically, or because they can call in, by the way, to Zoom. They can use their phone, which they need to be reminded of, but Zoom, if they have the app on their phone, they can use Zoom and do the whole session on their phone. It's not ideal, it's smaller, but it's better than nothing. Or we can reschedule if that needs be. But by you staying calm, by you having a protocol, they stay calm, and it's not a big deal to them. The number one thing that mediators do wrong here is they freak out. They get all worked up, they get all flustered. So for your own benefit, think about what you're going to do when it happens, because it will happen. And then finally, and then we'll go to questions, and I apologize, this has gone longer. I've gone into some of this detail, but I will stay on and answer questions. So first and foremost, I encourage you all to add an online platform. It's imperative that you take the time to learn how to use your programs. No one can show you. You have to practice. I encourage you to group together and do some role playing. Stay calm if anything goes wrong. And really importantly, let people know that you're offering your services online. It's not magic. People don't know. Send out an e-blast to your usual people. Put it on your website. Post it on LinkedIn or social media or both. Get the word out there. I can tell you as an online mediator, people are looking for people. So please let people know. The association may want to start a page or something that lets you all, add that, Darren.
I'll just, Susan, if I could, we're working on some changes to the NADN database and the local state chapter databases right now. I'll send the email probably Monday. We just need to get it up and running. We're coding as we speak. But we are going to prominently flag on the profile pages which members now offer this as a service. Beyond that, once we've done a bit of an audit of the members, we are going to do one of our rare national email broadcasts to 60,000 litigators plus, letting them know that NADN is now the resource they can come to find those experienced mediators that now offer this as a customer service. So we're working on that. There'll be tomorrow's email blast will be on the back of this, and we'll sort of send the recording of this to the members that couldn't attend. Next week there'll be a further email blast, and we're going to have Kathy and Roseanne reach out to the membership and start to populate the database with the all-important question of whether you, the members, offer this as a service. Hopefully everybody's getting up to speed in the next few days, and as you say, practice makes perfect. So yeah, we're looking into that marketing aspect as we speak.
And just this is my contact information. I am trying to answer emails. I'm getting literally 1,000 or more emails a day from people. I may not be able to answer your question right away, but I'm trying. I do have some upcoming webinar trainings. Those are a longer, much more, deeper dive into my particular process and program. I've added some of those webinars. I have one coming up on Saturday, this Saturday, the 21st at 4 p.m. Eastern. I have one on Tuesday, the 24th, next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern, and one next Friday at 12 noon Eastern. Those, you can sign up and register for all of those on my website, which is learntomediateonline.com, and find more information on that training and all my other trainings. I also do one-on-ones and group private trainings for, organizations or people who, want that more hands-on approach than a webinar.
Wonderful.
So, and now I'm happy to answer some questions. Darren had pulled some together from some of the emails.
I think I've answered 24 or so during the course of the.
I can imagine.
So let's have a look at some of these. This is an interesting one, and I don't know the answer myself. When using breakout room, this is from Dan Klein in Georgia. When using breakout rooms, Dan would like to assure the participants that they know in advance when I'm in the breakout room and when I'm not. In other words, to have a virtual equivalent of a knock on the door before entering. So if you put plaintiff's counsel and that side into a breakout room one, they can talk amongst themselves without you monitoring that conversation. You could ensure their confidentiality.
Yes. So the breakout rooms are separate private rooms that are essentially the closed door conference room that you might put people in your office. You do have the ability to pop in. It's join is up in the corner of the screen. When you click join, a square is going to appear on their screen. It'll
Right.
either be your video and they'll see you as you pop in, or you will come in as a name if you have your video off, but there's no way for you to just eavesdrop in the background.
Right.
Now, the one functionality that is difficult on Zoom is that there's no ding dong doorbell. I've talked to them about this, or
Right.
knocking on the door. They don't have that function. They're working on it. But what I have found is there is a broadcast to breakout rooms function. It's essentially sending a chat The problem with it is it goes to all the breakout rooms right now. You can't differentiate between them. So you can send a very neutral, message from you to the breakout rooms that, updating everyone. Quick update. I've spoken with plaintiff and Jim Brown in their conference room. I'd like to come in and speak with defense counsel and so. Now, would that be acceptable? They can see that and they can send you a message that it's okay or not. Give us 5 more minutes or whatever that is. So that's the clunkiest part, I would say. In general, it's not enough to warrant my not using Zoom. And I will say they're working on it. That Modron platform that I was talking about has a doorbell, ding dong, where you can ding dong them and go in there or chat with them. And that may be a better functionality down the road. But for me, I need the whiteboard and I need the screen share. So it won't work for me right now.
Good. Okay. And in terms of once you're back in the room with those two parties, or the attendees of that particular breakout room, it's very obvious to them you're back in the room because your video is back on their screens, right? So,
absolutely. It's like another meeting. So the 3 of you are there, or the 5 of you, or however many people. You are visible the minute you go into that room.
Wonderful. Okay. Let's have a look at this. Is from Steve Clymer, I think in Colorado. I understand screen sharing for documents and agreements, but how to obtain signatures from clients and counsel on the agreement via screen shared documents? So is there some preferred means by which to get electronic signatures on agreements?
I use DocuSign. I don't do it by screen share. Your screen share, so keep in mind what a screen share is. A screen share is you sharing your screen. They don't have access to the content on your computer. You have access to that content. So if you need to send something out for signature, just as you would in any format, it's not done through screen share. It would have to be done through either another program. Adobe has Adobe Signature. I think you could maybe share your Adobe screen and send it out through Adobe and people could sign it. I've not done that. That's not an issue in my mediation, so I've not done it, but great thinking. And that's exactly what I've been talking about here. Think about what you need to do in your mediations and then figure out how you're going to do it remotely. So, but DocuSign, again, for me, very simple way to send things out. I love it.
Wonderful. We'll file this under don't ask, don't get. And a number of the members have asked, could you share your online guidelines and ground rules? So perhaps the answer is no, but I don't know if that would be something just to give. Obviously, each of the members needs to tailor it to their own practice, but could you give us a potentially materials tomorrow? Could you give us a sort of couple of bullet points as to what you ask of the attendees?
So I don't share those. Those are trademarked and proprietary materials that are a part of my training program. So all of my trainees receive them and they receive a license to use them in their practice. That's personal to them. But I will tell you the content of what you need to put in there is in these slides. I have extrapolated the information that's in my online guidelines and ground rules and given that to you to create your own document. But I don't share mine except with, it wouldn't be fair to my paying trainees to then give it out for free to everybody.
I should say in the email follow-up tomorrow to the members, I will be including the dates and the training classes you mentioned. So members have the option to go deeper and sort of work through some of the more advanced functions on the Zoom platform. I know that there are various, we've talked about this earlier, Cisco systems and FaceTime for, Skype for business and so on. There are various platforms. My recommendation to the members, and I'm not on commission either, is Zoom is rock solid. Some of the busiest mediators, some of whom are here today, I think, but some of the most prominent mediators in the country, some of the largest panel firms in the country use Zoom as their platform. So I would, for $15 a month, you can't go wrong. Just sign up now and start practicing would be my advice.
It's always worked for me, but I'm not affiliated with them either. It's just what works for me.
Yes. If we were on commission, we could retire in the next week.
I know.
So I think that's about it. I think we've covered any of the questions we haven't covered. I'm going to copy and paste them down, and I'll try to get back to those individual members by email in the coming days. Now, I should say I've invited Susan to reconvene with us perhaps 2 weeks from now. I think the most important thing is members get signed up to Zoom, send out invites to immediate family members, fellow mediators, do some practicing. And if we reconvene in 2 weeks' time, we can sort of have the whole hour or so as a Q&A session about the experiences and any discomfort that folks felt transferring to this medium. And you've several thousand miles in this car, Susan, so you'll be able to sort of put some minds to rest about this scary transfer to cyberspace.
Yeah, and I do, I want to say overall, this has been one of the best things that has happened both professionally as well as personally for me. The ability to take my practice online has given me the ability to continue to have a very robust practice and professional life as my personal life has moved me around the country. I now work with people in all countries around the world. It has expanded my reach. I know it may seem scary to do something in a different way. It has been so worth the learning curve for me. And I encourage you all to keep an open mind. I also, if you go to learntomediateonline.com and sign up for the newsletter, I'm pulling together like an FAQ, frequently asked questions, and I'll be sending that out as a newsletter for people too, because many of you have the same questions. And rather than send out 1,000 emails trying to answer 1,000 emails, I'm gonna send that out. So I do encourage you to sign up for the newsletter. I try not to send you spam or bad. I'm really trying to just help people through this platform.
Wonderful. Okay, well, I think our proverbial time is up. Susan, thank you so much for joining us. As I say, we'll reconvene perhaps in 2 weeks' time. We'll sort the date out, and because your own schedule has gone bananas, of course.
It has.
We'll find 1 hour that you're conscious some point around 2 weeks from now.
Wonderful.
We'll reconvene for the members that want to sort of go deeper, and we can share experiences of the learning curve over the next week or two.
Happy to do it.
Wonderful.
Good luck to everybody.
Take care.
Bye-bye.